May I have your attention, please? We are ready to start today's program. First, I would like to acknowledge our own Jane Tucker Radley. Jane, thank you for introducing us to Donna. And she also hosted her as her guest here in Savannah. So we really do appreciate all that you do for us. So thank you very much. Donna Rice Hughes. She's an American activist, author, speaker, film producer, but if that's not enough, she is president and chairman of Enough is Enough. Donna has appeared in a variety of outlets as an internet safety advocate. The Enough Enough mission is to make the internet safer for children and for families. As a nonpartisan, nonprofit, Enough is Enough emerged back in 1994 as the pioneering leader on the front lines to prevent the internet exploitation of children. Think about that, 1994, and where we're at today. Thank goodness they started in 1994. One of the objectives of Ladies on the Right is to educate members on current local, state, and national issues to inspire and motivate us to take action. This is an issue that hits us here at home, within our state, as well as nationally. We cannot pick up a paper or hear news about hearing something about social media, the negative impact on our children, gaming, you name it. It's scary. And as a grandmother of 10, it's even more scary. So with that, I would like to introduce Donna Rice Hughes.
Thank you, Jody, and thanks to all of you for being here. And thank you to my dear friend Jane for inviting me. We've been talking about this for quite a while, so it's wonderful to be here and to be in Savannah. I am a South Carolina girl, and this is my first time to Savannah. Can you believe it? I know, I'm embarrassed. What can I say? But I've been in Northern Virginia for about 35 years, so we've just come back to South Carolina and to Charleston, and I'm just thrilled to be here and to meet so many of you. I hope I can meet more of you that I haven't met yet, and to see your beautiful city. And it's great to be with like-minded people. Isn't it great to always be on the right side? I mean, right, you know? One thing that you're probably going to hear a lot of things today that may surprise you, but I'll start with this one. The issue of protecting kids online is actually a bipartisan issue. Everyone agrees. I've been doing this for 30 years, and in Congress, it's been both Democrats and Republicans who have supported the legislation that we've been fighting for at the national level. So that might surprise you, but this is a good thing. There are some things that we actually do agree on. So with that, I'm going to get started. I apologize that some of the things I'm going to be sharing are very hard to hear. This is dark stuff, but it's just the truth. And we can't battle something if we don't understand what it is we're fighting, right? So first of all, let me ask you this. How many of you have children between 2, or children or grandchildren, nieces or nephews, between 2 and 18? Okay, that's a lot of you, all right? And in the 3 decades I have been doing this work, every time something bad has happened to a kid online, we're going to talk about all the risk that they're facing and have been facing and are currently facing. I've had a parent come up to me and they said, Donna, I knew this, but I never thought it would happen to my child. And so I just want, as you're listening to me, for you to think about those children in your life that you love and to recognize a very important truth, and that is that no child is immune to these dangers and these risks that I'm going to be talking about. So we're going to talk about some dangers and risks, and then we're going to talk about preventing these dangers and risks on multiple levels, and then drive it down to what you can do to protect the children in your own life. So with that, we'll begin. First of all, I think this is a pretty important stat. 31% of 8-year-olds own a smartphone in 2021, nearly tripling from 2015. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, so sorry. Well, gosh, did you hear anything I said in the beginning? Don't make me repeat it. I hope you heard that, okay? The most important thing I said is no child is immune. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. All right. We recently did a town hall with Attorney General Mayoris in Virginia, and he said something that I thought was really good, and so I put his quote up here. He says, "The day you give your child a smartphone is the day your child's childhood ends." That's really profound. And I'm going to fast forward to prevention really quick. There's a whole campaign now it's called Wait Until 8th Grade. Kids below 8th grade really don't have any business having a smartphone, and I think you're going to see when I start talking about some of the dangers. There are lots of phones that you can give them that are not internet connected, but giving them a smartphone just does open up a lot of problems. So here we go. All right, we're going to talk about pornography. All right, this is one of the big dangers online. How many of you think that pornography online is protected by the First Amendment? Okay, how many of you think it is protected by the First Amendment? Let me just say that the online porn industry is bigger than Amazon, Netflix, and all these other online pornos combined. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Okay, you guys are bashful. Nobody's going to take a stand. Do you think it's protected speech? You think it's protected speech? Okay, it is not. It is not protected speech. So I am going to cover 3 types of pornography that the Supreme Court of the United States has deemed not to be protected under the First Amendment, all right? The first is harmful to minors or indecency, all right? This is when most people think of pornography, and you're going, why are we talking about pornography? Because kids are the largest consumers of this content, all right, online. So most people think of pornography as what we call the harmful to minors indecency type of material. That is the soft core content. That's the kind of material like Playboy and Hustler magazine that an adult can get over 18, right? If you were to go and get something like that at a magazine store, you probably remember those days. But a child cannot, right? So it's illegal for a child to get that type of content in print and broadcast. Online, we got laws passed back in 1995, 96. They were struck down by the Supreme Court that would have protected kids from that type of content online. All right? The next type of content is called obscenity. This is hardcore material depicting a sex act or deviant types of material. This is the majority of the content that is online. This is illegal for adults and for kids. But why do you think it's out there? In abundance. Because the laws have not been enforced since George W. Bush was president. That's why. So just think about driving over the speed limit. If the speed limit's 60 and nobody's enforcing the law and everybody's going 100 miles an hour, you start to think, gosh, going 100 miles an hour is okay, right? Because the laws have not been enforced. So that's what's happened with this type of material. The third type of content that is not protected speech under the First Amendment is child pornography. All right, this is when an actual child is being depicted in a sex act or in a sexually prurient way. We have now renamed this as child sex abuse material because this kind of content actually depicts sexual violence against a child. So that's being renamed currently. None of this is protected speech, but guess what are the 2 most prevalent types of pornography on the internet that I've just covered? The hardcore obscenity and the child pornography. And kids have free and easy access to all of it. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about why this is a problem. There's a lot of reasons why it's a problem. But the illegal obscenity that is out there, the majority of it, 88% of the scenes depicted depict some type of violence against a woman. Themes like teen rape, incest, and choking are the most prominent. Now think about a child seeing this type of content at 7, 8, and 9 years old, which is average, age and how this is shaping their sexual template. They're already admitting in surveys, 10, 11, and 12-year-olds, that this is where they go to get their information about sex and sexual intimacy. And of course, it is not teaching them what we would like them to understand about healthy sexuality. It robs them of their innocence. It's highly addictive. It actually decreases the gray matter. It is literally changing the brain. Once you've seen it, it cannot be erased. And one thing we know about kids is that they tend to act out what they see. And this is what's happening. So that's one of the key dangers. And I think I failed to mention this, but I don't know how to go back now. But it's about 57% of the pornography consumed by kids under 18 or by kids under the age of 14. So kids under 14 and 10, this is what they're seeing. And folks, it's not a matter of if they're seeing this content, it's a matter of when, all right? And it is having devastating impact, and it's not just boys, these are girls too, that are getting addicted at 11, 12, and 13 years old, all right? We know that exposure to this, the data shows that kids that are exposed to this type of content are 3 times more likely to be sexually exploited or to be one who sexually exploits another. All right, next. I told you this isn't pretty information. Okay, oops, I just messed up my slide. Brandon, how do I go back? Just tell me, do I hit the back button? I knew I should have let him do this. There we go. Okay, the next area of primary harm is what I put under the big umbrella title of the online sexual exploitation and abuse of children. This is the new data. This is pandemic. Pornography online is pandemic. This is pandemic. When you hear the numbers, I'm sorry, it's sad, but this is just the way it is. Just recently, there's been a 97% increase in reports of the online enticement of kids to the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children. Last year, there were 36 million reports of child pornography. That's over 105 million actual videos and images of children being sexually exploited. Of those, 63% of kids are under the age of 8, 78% are under the age of 12, and the biggest trend really for about 10 to 15 years has been babies and toddlers. And when I have worked with A.G. Barr when he was in under Trump, and he told us then, he said, we can't prosecute our way out of this problem, all right? And that their primary focus was focusing on the youngest of the young, were the infants and the toddlers. And so and this content is very highly addictive, obviously, as well. So a pedophile or a predator that uses this content, just like any addiction, it tends to escalate. So they want more violent, more extreme, more younger, and so this is why you've seen this trend continue. Those who view this type of material, again, tend to act out what they see on a real child. The data shows 37% of men, it's mostly men, who view this type of content or are sexually aroused by it will actually act out against an actual child. You can see on my screen, so I don't have to ask you to raise your hand. Guess who's number 1 in the world for producing this content? The United States of America. And number 1 for hosting these URLs under a company called VeriSign that is about 15 minutes from my house. Right. And so, okay, here's more and more of this data. Have you heard of sextortion? Do you know what that is? All right. So sextortion is primarily when a predator or a bully or just an extortionist will get a child or a woman, but we're just talking about children right now, to get a picture of themselves in a sexually provocative, picture or a video. Then they will threaten to put that picture or video online unless that person, the child or the adult, and usually a woman, pays them a certain amount of money. Can you hear me? I'm just really, okay. Pays them a certain amount of money, and so this is why it's called sextortion. Young boys, teenage boys are the primary audience, are the primary targets of sextortionists. I don't know if you heard of this story, but it was all over the news. A congressman in South Carolina's son was sextorted. It happened within a few hours last year. Someone pretended to be a girl and asked him for a nude picture of himself, and he sent it. Once he sent it, the person said, well, I'm not really this girl, I'm whoever, and I want a certain amount of money, or I'm going to put this online and let your parents know about it. The boy was so shamed. He was a prominent athlete in high school, I think he was in Columbia, South Carolina, and I don't know, within 3 hours of all this starting, his father heard a gun go off. Suicide. So this is a growing problem. Keep in mind, the internet, I love the internet. I couldn't do my job without the internet. But when we talk about crimes online and internet crimes against children, these are bad people that are exploiting good and neutral technology, all right? And because guess who's online all the time? Kids. So where kids play, predators prey. So who else is going to be online looking for them? Predators. And predators come in all shapes and sizes. They can be a trafficker, they can be a pedophile, they can be just a sexual predator, they can be a pornographer, they can be a cyberbully, they can be a sextortionist. All right. This is the story of John Doe. I interviewed John a number of years ago. He's a convicted sex offender. And I said, John, I spent 3 hours with him in a high-security prison. And I said, I want you to tell parents and people about how you groom kids online. How do you get kids to trust you? And so he did. This is just a 3-minute clip, but it's also his story, where you see the cycle of abuse of how does someone end up in a situation like this. So this is John's story, 3 minutes of it, that is.
I was convicted of possession of child pornography and forcible sodomy, and was given a sentence of 45 years. In a 3-hour period of time, if I spent online, I would probably talk to 25 children. It would be my goal to find out what type of person it is that they were looking to speak to. So if it was a 13 or 14-year-old boy who was interested in speaking to a 13 or 14-year-old female, then I would be that female. There are millions of pictures online that you can download and send as far as this is who I am. When I went to my father's house on the weekends, he would take me to a bar where I was raped by both males and females in the bar. I didn't, use any pornography for myself until I got the internet. Initially, it was heterosexual, mild pornography, and then there comes a point where that is just not, doesn't satisfy anymore. So I started to look at child pornography. When you spend so much time online, I don't know how it affects other people, but it made me feel, it wore away my inhibitions.
There's definitely research to indicate that child pornography fuels the desire and fuels the fire in someone who is interested sexually in children to go ahead and act on that.
I believe that a huge part of my choices to interact with children is because of the sexual abuse. I would see children as peers instead of as an adult-child situation. I absolutely believe that the kids who I talked to saw me as a friend. I'm certain that they trusted me. I'm certain that they liked me. Kids were very, very willing to send pictures of a sexual nature. They are inundated with sexual images and sexual conversation that allow them to very freely participate in those types of conversations and activities. There was a point where there was just no going back. You know, you get so, it's very much like an addiction. The internet is not the appropriate place for parents to give them their privacy. You know, I don't believe that children have the available resources, the knowledge, the wisdom to be able to prevent, you know, a predator from approaching them. There is a good, healthy amount of fear that the kids need to have because I think they're very trusting.
That's just a little clip, but this is very common where a predator can be grooming up to 20, 30, 50 kids at a time online. The other thing that predators do, and predators, by the way, a trafficker is a predator. They're just a subset of a predator. But they also, these predators, they congregate online and they share information about how to contact kids. They share kids back and forth. They share child pornography back and forth. So this is the way all this works. So when you hear of a big sting where a pedophile or a child porn ring is, you know, brought down by law enforcement, that's because they congregate online and do these crimes together. And I'm not going to go into too much more, but there's a lot more to that, and it's getting worse and worse. And artificial intelligence is not going to make detecting these crimes any better. In fact, that is exacerbating everything that I'm going to be talking to you about today. First of all, let me say, I know this is hard, so I'm getting through the bad stuff because we're going to get to the hope, okay? Because we can prevent this, all right? And each one of you is a first line of defense, by the way, for protecting the children in your own life and in your own world. Now, kids themselves, this is what we call youth risky behavior. All right, look at some of this data. In spite of the fact that we talk to our kids that there's dangerous content and dangerous people out there, look at the data. 40% of kids grades 4th through 8th are connecting with strangers online. All right? 53% are letting them know their phone number. When we get to safety, we tell kids never, ever, ever share any personal information with anybody online. Don't post it, don't share it. In particular, if you don't know that person. But what's the problem with kids once they're on social media or something? Well, I've been talking to this person, and this person knows that person. This person knows Jane and Mary and Susie and Tom, and it's a friend. Do you know that person in real life? No, then it's not a friend. All right? Because they don't know who they are, because they could be John Doe pretending to be somebody else. All you got to do is get a picture, say you're that person, and a kid, an innocent kid, buys into this. They're no match for a manipulative, anonymous predator or trafficker. So you can see this data up here. 30% are texting strangers by their phone. By the way, a predator's goal, if they meet a child in a chat room, in an online gaming environment, and on social media, their main goal is to get them into private conversations. And you can see how these kids are so willing to do this because they're trusting, right? This is why we really have to start talking to them very early about these dangers that are out there in an age-appropriate way. Sexting, do you know what sexting is? Anybody don't know what sexting is? You do? Okay. So this is scary, but remember when I talked about kids acting out what they see when we were talking about pornography? Well, this is where they're getting their information about sex, and they're getting sexualized very early, and they think it's okay to take their clothes off and to take videos and pictures of themselves and to send to someone. Look at the numbers. 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 10 boys admit that they're sexting, and 40% just think it's normal. That's scary, parents and grandparents. So cyberbullying, we all know what that is. 1 in 2 kids ages 13 to 17 have experienced some form of bullying. And Jane just told me a story last night about a woman here whose child ended her life And yet, like I said, you never think it's going to happen to your child. You can prevent these things, and I promise we're going to get to how do we prevent this. But let's just keep going through the dangers. Now we're on sex trafficking. I interviewed this woman, Susan, wonderful Christian home, conservative, voted red. Her daughter, unbeknownst to them, for 9 months, while living at home, while going to high school, was being trafficked every day after school. All right? This is Susan. You can see the whole webinar. This is just a couple of minutes.
Human trafficking is an incredibly problematic crime. It's the second largest criminal enterprise in the world. The average age of victims is 14 to 16 years old.
Our eldest daughter had just started high school and had just turned 15 years of age. Courtney met a young boy who was the same age. He seemed handsome, polite, well-dressed, well-mannered, and they started an online relationship and friendship to get to know one another. We all thought that this was a sweet, innocent young boy. Rather than that, he was an MS-13 gang member sent to recruit and lure young girls into the dark world of human trafficking. Life for Courtney will never be the same, and our family will never be the same. But we are resilient, and we want to make it so no other family or no other child ever has to endure what we went through. And that's through simple education and awareness. And if I was a parent and I had had the education that I do now, I know for a fact I would have been able to change the events that our family endured.
So that's just a little bit of Courtney and their story. They're doing good now. They're doing good, but never be the same. So here's some warning signs. Let me just say that some of these warning signs are really warning signs of any child being sexualized in any way online. So that could be having been exposed to a predator, having been trafficked, getting into pornography, sexting, any of these kinds of things. Now you may say, especially if you've had a preteen or a teenager, this is just normal puberty stuff and teenage stuff. But when you start to see it collectively all coming together, it's really important to pay attention. Changes in mood. I mean, really severe changes in mood, changes in dress and style, signs of abuse, appears tired, changes in weight, decreased motivation, increased secrecy. This is pretty big. If they start getting gifts or unexplained material possessions, this is one of the ways that predators and traffickers will groom a child. More sexually curious and promiscuous. Am I at 15 minutes? You're waving at me? Hi. How much time do I have left? You have about 10 minutes. Oh dear. Okay, well let's go really fast. Okay, so a lot of warning signs. All right, social media, real quickly. Social media, you've probably seen some of the hearings that are out, have been happening. It's highly addictive. The Surgeon General has said that social media presents a health risk to children, which is a really good thing that he started to say that. We know that it does. And again, here's just, again, some of the data of what kids are coming across on social media. By the way, the age limit for social media sites is 13. However, they have no age verification in place. So a child that's 7, 8, 9 years old can just go and lie about their age. We're trying to change that in Congress to get this age verification in place. And I can tell you the biggest enemies of a lot of things that we're talking about today is big tech. They're fighting all this legislation. It's not the Dems, it's not the Republicans, they're all together. It's big tech, okay? They're putting profits over safety, online gaming. Anytime a child has an internet connection, they are open to all the dangers I've just talked about. Online games are no different. These are connected to the internet, right? So one of the ways that we protect kids in an online gaming environment or a smartphone or a computer is we have to start with the prevention. So because I'm running out of time now, I'm not going to get too much into online gaming, but I will say that this is a predator's and trafficker's dream, because they are actually playing a game with the child in order to befriend them, right? So that just lowers the barrier of a child recognizing that this person is dangerous. Okay, so prevention, and enough is enough. Our whole focus is prevent, 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 right? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. We do so by educating the public. We have an Internet Safety 101 program, won an Emmy Award. We have a whole website, internetsafety101.org. And the second area is working with corporate America to get them to do the right thing. One of the things that we did over the past few years is start a safe Wi-Fi initiative. And we've gotten Starbucks, McDonald's, and Marriott to actually voluntarily filter pornography and child pornography in all their stores and all their hotels in the United States. So that was a big victory, and we're trying to get this to go to other companies. The third prevention prong is getting the laws enforced and funded and getting new laws in place. And then the fifth is working with the faith community. So this is just a little video we did. There's 5 major pieces of legislation in the Senate right now that have gotten wide bipartisan support, and we're trying to get Senator Schumer to bring them to a floor vote and get these laws signed.
In 1964, the U.S. Surgeon General issued an advisory against smoking cigarettes. It became a priority to regulate big tobacco companies for the sake of public health. Today, we're facing a new type of public health crisis. The Surgeon General is now warning that social media presents a profound risk of harm for our children's mental health and safety. It's time to treat big tech like big tobacco. Congress must take action to rein in big tech and protect children from dangers online.
So we've got a coalition of about 300 NGO groups, and you would have heard of a lot of them, where with our collective voice, we're actually making things happen. All right, and like I said, guess who's fighting us? The multi-billion-dollar big tech companies, because they don't want to be regulated, unfortunately. So this is some of the legislation, which I'm going to pass over. Now what I'd like for you to do, does this include Q&A, 10 minutes, or do I still have 10 minutes for Q&A?
No, we're going to be wrapping it up when you wrap up, so be sure to share that information.
Okay, so if you want to pull this out, I want to run through just some very quick points on how to protect the kids in your own life. One of the most important things on the first page says, build an atmosphere of trust. You can prevent a lot of these crimes from happening and a lot of the abuse and exploitation of children in your life if you keep the lines of communication open, because you want to be the first line of defense and you want that child to come to you with anything that has happened and to feel like they can talk to you about anything. Just think of the boy who was sextorted, felt like he could come to his father. Or the young girl that was being cyberbullied who jumped off the bridge in Savannah, that they're afraid and they're ashamed. So if you can start as a child is getting connected to technology, keep the lines of communication open all the time and let them know there's absolutely nothing off limits that they can't come to you about and talk about, and that you're there to help them, of course. Teach them to avoid sharing personal information. You establish rules. But let me just go over some of the tools. Setting up parental control tools on every device that your child uses is absolutely imperative. So if they've got a smartphone and a laptop and a gaming device, turn on all the filters. Turn on the monitoring. Filters is different than monitoring. All right, set time limits. You can set time limits for each child. If you let them on social media, which I don't recommend you do until at least they're 14 or so, or even giving them a smartphone, get on the social media site with them. Limit their friends list. The same thing with online gaming. So a lot of parents don't realize that they don't have to let their kids play with anybody. You can say you can only play with Jimmy, Tommy, and Sam. And you can lock down that audience of people that they can play with so they won't be exposed to these predators. And so I'm going to wrap with that. And I'm sorry, I guess I've run out of time here, but can I take any questions? Yes. I'm sorry.
Having pornography in our children's school is totally
It is.
partisan. I've heard Obama refer to it as don't vote for a Republican, they'll tell you what to read. And of course, he's referring to this movement. Here in Savannah, the Democrats defend pornography in our children's schools, saying it's intellectual freedom, and we're banning books.
Yes.
What is the disconnect here?
Yeah, and that's a great question, and we work on those issues as well. This kind of comes down to an old argument with the American Library Association in literature and books. And I don't know why it's partisan in the schools. I just kind of attribute it to woke. You know, there's this whole woke movement. But with respect to what I've been talking about, these are actual crimes. Okay, so that might be why it's more bipartisan. What we're talking about, protecting kids from child pornography, hardcore pornography, and trafficking and all of that, because these are crimes against children. Oh, there's no question about it, because the schools, by allowing this, and I always say it's like the slippery slope from what we've been battling here on the internet has now slipped into the school in the form of curriculum. Okay, and now you've got this whole woke movement that has kind of said this is okay. And I think by and large it's because we haven't solved this problem out here, so now they're coming in under the radar in curriculum. So there's definitely a connection. I don't think there's a disconnect, there is a connection. But, you know, what's happening in the schools is very partisan, you know, and what's happening, what I've been talking about, is nonpartisan and bipartisan. I know, go figure.
Okay, we have another question here. No, you know what? I'm going to please ask if you could stay after for some questions. As you know, we're very respectful of everybody's time, and so we have a few more things we need to cover, but
Yes.
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Great job.